Right, so it is November the 16th, Saturday. Yeah, okay. Alright, so I got a request to make a video on how the black box, solenoid box on a twin turbo Subaru Rev D operates. So yeah, we'll explain that. Alright, I have got one that I'll pull out. So it is located in the driver's side of the strut tower, and what we have is we have operation of the solenoids that control. So pipe 1 will do this valve here that will basically allow air or boost pressure to go into the intercooler from the secondary turbo. That comes on, you can restrict that with a boost pill, which will delay it and kind of get rid of a bit of lag between turbos, or the valley of death, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so number 2 is hooked up to basically to the intercooler, and that is a duty solenoid valve, and that also can have a restrictor in it. Number 3 is basically goes off to the intercooler 2 for boost pressure itself. So number 6, that goes to the negative, it is negative, sorry, yeah, negative of the damper pot. That will pull down and open the exhaust. Number 5 is a pressure. Now you can run this without it. What it will do, it will delay the pre-spool, but it will allow the primary to stay online longer before you get VOD, but depending on how well your box is working. Yeah, so we've got number 12, number 11 doesn't use it on there. So number 10, which I don't even hook up anymore, that just goes back over to this side here, and it's normally teed in to the blow-off valve. Now I hardline that, but it can give you a symptom of hunting at highway speed, where the throttle's real sensitive and the turbo's like on and off spooling. But yeah, it's not a major, something I've lived with for a long time, but normally that is routed with a 4 T-piece. There is a mod called Pipe 10 mod, and that kind of eliminates that, but I've got rid of that a long time ago. With Rev D, we have the boost pressure or map sensor basically located on the throttle body, as we have, which I have another one, we have this solenoid box, which I'll just put on the ground. So inside you can see they're pretty much identical within reason, from A through to D, except for the map sensor lives in here. So number 12, that's pipe number 12, and that has basically a one-way valve in it, and when the engine's idling, the vacuum, it sucks, basically it puts a vacuum in the vacuum tank, and that routes along the front bumper into a tank on the passenger's front under the guard. Then we have, so pipe 1 goes to, that is pipe 1, yeah, so basically that's your air intake valve, basically. That vents to atmosphere, basically to allow the valve to open. So when you're in primary mode, it puts a vacuum on that, and that basically keeps that valve closed. So one way to know if you've got vacuum in your thing is to remove pipe number 1, and you'll hear it suck the vacuum, well, discharge the vacuum out of the vacuum tank. Number 2, okay, number 2 basically goes to, where are we? Number 2, it's been a few years since I've actually got into one of these for a while, but they're not that bad to do. So number 2 is basically a duty solenoid, so it's kind of like a relief valve in its own right, the same as the primary's got in the guard, and that goes to this one here, and that's teed into pipe 5 as well. And pipe 5 is the pressure on the pre-spool. So 2 and 5 assist with pre-spool, Okay, 3, now we got 3, 3, 3, 3, so 3 is a vacuum, and it can be positive, and we're on 3 there. Sorry, that's the wrong one. That's 6. That goes to 6. So yeah, 6 is a vacuum. That takes it from the vacuum tank there. Yeah. So number 1 hose is got a vacuum from the vacuum tank, which basically supplied from pipe 12 that has a one-way valve in it that when the engine's at idle or under the highest vacuum causes the vacuum tank to creates a vacuum in the tank, put it that way. So pipe 1 with no vacuum, the valve is open. So when the engine starts and the vacuum is built up, it basically puts a vacuum on line 1, and that will suck the valve closed. That will allow the secondary to be offline and primary spool only, and that normally around, based on RPM, between 4 and 5,000 RPM, that will lose vacuum and that will vent to atmosphere, and yeah, the solenoid will change over to atmosphere. Sorry. Number 2, basically onto the intercooler, that is teed into the solenoid here, which is basically a duty solenoid, the same as the one that's for the primary, for the wastegate, that is located under the passenger's front guard. That there goes to the damper pot and puts a positive pressure on the damper pot for pre-spool. You can run without pipe 5, but it can give a delayed, because you get no pre-spool. But some Subarus have driven, don't seem to care about it, some do, some don't. But this here is a Rev Rev A to C. The only difference between these ones here is this map sensor here, which the Rev D, which I've got next to me, is a has it on the throttle body. But yeah, I've got quite a few of these boxes, but I didn't really want to pull one out of my car, so I'll just go through with this one here. So pipe 3 is basically another pressure hose, and that is hooked up to the 8. So what that does is that closes the relief valve, and that forces it closed under secondary spooling. So yeah, and then that also, number 8 has a vacuum on it as well to open the relief valve for pre-spool, so the turbo can spool up. That pressure's got to go somewhere, so it just goes around in a circuit, and it just dumps it back into before the turbo. It just goes around a circle until that turbo comes online, and yeah, it's really well done for how mechanical it all really is, electromechanical, should I say. So number 6 is basically a vacuum that's hooked up to the vacuum, and that will suck the damper pot down. That can be adjusted. That thing, it should be adjusted at engine normal operating temperature, and just before it starts making a noise, just wind it until it tightens up just a little bit, and that's pretty good there. Too loose, and you won't get good primary spool. Too tight, so other way around, too loose, you will get the really delayed secondary. Too tight, and it'll be open a little bit, and you'll lose primary boost pressure. Yeah, so then number 5, I've gone through number 5, and number 8, number 6, number 3, yeah, that's all done. Number 12 is basically the vacuum from the engine, and on this one here has number 11, which is for the boost pressure or map sensor, and that changes when the computer, because the computer doesn't have basically a reference point of the atmospheric pressure. So what it does is it actually turns the solenoid to atmosphere. So this can read atmosphere, and it can read vacuum and boost pressure. So it's done really cleverly. If this solenoid gets any issues, you can get kind of surging at like mid-range type of thing, but like fuel cut, feels like a fuel cut, and it's not. It's just that the solenoid in this here is not reading properly. Do not spray these with any cleaner, you'll destroy them. Don't use really harsh chemicals. Brake clean's pretty good. Carburetor clean, I've heard, I have destroyed one of these with carburetor cleaner, and it causes them to swell up and they just stop moving. So probably not carb cleaner. They don't really get too gummed up, they just get a bit oily. You can put filters in line on them. Yeah, so number one, you can put a restrictor in it if you want, and what they do is it will delay a bit of the VOD, the lag between the turbos, and it'll cause the primary to stay on later by a little bit, but can also have the opposite effect. When you want to go back to primary, it can take a while for it to go back to primary, but it's not a major. Number two, you can also do the same thing, put a restrictor in that, and same thing, it just delays the pre-spool type of thing. It's, yeah, they're pretty ingenious for how they work, but yeah, and like I said, you can depin these and just, yeah, apply power to them, or you can put them in diagnostic mode with the green connectors and black connectors under the dash if you want, but I've always manually done it, that way I can hold it open as long as I need it and set it clicking away. But yeah, that's basically them. It's pretty simple. Alright, so basically what you can do, so I'm trying to pop this through here, so you have your atmospheric pressure, you've got your differential, pressure differential sensor there, you've got secondary wastegate, duty cycle, which primary, so that's the one located under the guard. Sorry, I'm just trying to multitask here. So this one here, you've got to be really careful with some of these Subarus. So this one is a lambda sensor on it, and that's still a 4 wire, and it's not an O2 sensor. So if you replace that and you replace the wrong sensor, put the wrong one in there, you'll get a whole lot of problems. It will read really funny voltages, like 1 point something volts, and it's implausible. So just be aware of what you're installing. If it's a wideband or a narrowband O2, Subarus, a lot of them have really slow response O2 and lambda sensors, and a lot of people chase a lot of problems when it's all that doesn't throw a code for it. That can be potentially an issue. So always look at the data, don't just guess, look and see what it's doing, because a lazy sensor will give you really bad fueling and stuff like that, really delayed throttle. I've seen people try and modify all sorts of stuff on cars, and it's just a lazy sensor. It still works, it's not going to throw a code, but yeah, so just keep that in mind with these vehicles as they get older. So we have negative pressure, we have positive pressure exhaust there, so that's that basically that pot that regulates the exhaust gas on the secondary solenoid turbo. Sorry, I've got a relief valve and the other relief valve, so I've got all them. So you can go through and just check that they work while driving, and you can download something that you can actually graph this. This does not graph, it's just basically just symbols and numbers. And maybe screen record it, or someone else drive it and you watch it, but don't do it while driving. It doesn't work because you need to see it there and then. So probably record it is probably the best thing to do, and you can go back over it and have a look. And when doing that, make sure you put your throttle positions and vehicle speed and stuff like that, so you know what you're doing. But yeah, so I thought I'd just throw that in there as well, just to make life a little bit easier of diagnosing stuff like this. And also on these cars, it gives you grams per second, grams per second airflow, as the older Subarus, the generation before this, only give you a voltage, which is a little bit harder to decipher. But with the voltage one, a good known voltage for idle is about 1.2 volts is good. 1.24 is not bad, but yeah. Throttle, yeah, TPS, see there's the voltage there. So if I go into this now, and we go to start, so obviously our pressure differential sensor is reading that. Yeah, that's a sensor, that's the pressure of it, and then we've got the voltage. So the pressure is a lot more helpful. The voltage can, yeah, obviously mass is reading high because the engine's off. which, yeah, is just a little bit different. But I thought I just threw that in there as well. Okay. Alright, and this is a Rev B. So as you can see, different idle control, no map sensor there, or boost pressure sensor. So that lives in there, and that's the 3-wire for it, basically. Yeah, just small little differences. I don't know if the throttle bodies are interchangeable. I'm pretty sure basically the manifolds may be interchangeable. There are a few little small things that can catch people out when changing these things over, so just be aware of that. But yeah, hopefully that is helpful to anybody who's been working on one of these things. They're pretty reliable. It's just a bit of maintenance just to keep them going, and especially when they've been sitting, not ideal. Like any car, when they sit, they deteriorate. So if you get them going, keep them clean, keep that cleaned out. It doesn't need to be cleaned all the time. Like what, done it once in 2 years. Yeah, and like the second time I did it was didn't even need it, just pre-maintenance type of stuff. These alternators are rubbish. They seem to fry themselves. I have installed a predecessor, the 2-wire, instead, and that's run better and had no issues. But this will be my 4th alternator on this car. I don't know why they burn out, but they just seem to. The green plug, I don't know why. The newer one's a black plug. And the predecessor to that was the 2-wire, but yeah, and this also has a new silicon intake, because the primary down there, where are we? Somewhere down there. What that does is it ends up splitting, and you end up sucking in unmetered air. You probably wouldn't even know, and also so that's going to throw the map sensor out and cause fueling issues. So yeah. Just some things to be on the lookout, and there's a lot more to this. There is a lot more to these cars, but that's just the baseline of what I can fit in the video.